Welcome to the Black Box of Media, brought to you by Ultimate Edge Communications. I'm your host, Alicia McCall, and this is episode 13. This podcast lifts the lid on the hidden strategies behind high-performance marketing and media advertising. If you've ever wondered why some campaigns absolutely crush it and others fall flat, this is where we break it all down. Today, we are going to be discussing agentic marketing. What we're going to be focusing on is what real AI transformation actually looks like. Every marketing conference right now is talking about AI. Every software company claims to have it, and according to Boston Consultant Group, 96% of CMOs say they're transforming with AI. However, the problem is that only around 1/3 have actually redesigned how marketing operates. The great news I have for you all today is that today's guest has. We have the wonderful Katrina Campbell here with us today. She has spent the last several years leading one of the most ambitious AI and marketing transformation programs inside a private equity-backed healthcare organization operating in one of the world's most regulated environments. Now, this wasn't just about using ChatGPT to write better emails. It was about rebuilding marketing from the ground up for the future age. We're talking data, CRM, personalisation, AI agents, attribution, the dark funnel, board reporting, and connecting it all into one commercial growth engine. I cannot tell you how excited I am to unpack this with Katrina today. We are super lucky to have her experience in the room to talk marketers like you through the steps that need to happen in order to transform a business and marketing program using AI. We are going to unpack what it really takes to move beyond AI experience and build an organization for what is coming next. So Katrina, without further ado, I would love to welcome you to the show today. I cannot wait to unpack these questions with you.
Thanks, Alicia. Really happy to be here.
Wonderful. Okay, well, look, let's jump straight into this AI reality. As I mentioned at the very beginning, everyone seems to be talking about AI. Very few organizations right now are either at the early stages or are not quite transforming with it. So why do you think that there's such a gap right now? What's your take?
I think everyone is absolutely talking about AI. Everyone's talking about how they can bring AI into their work streams, boards, C-suite, stakeholders. Everybody wants AI in their organization, but it's a case of what does that AI pathway look like? To your point, about 96% of marketers are saying that they are using AI in some way, shape, or form. I think a lot of that is more to do with redoing the sort of whether it be how you do your content marketing or social media calendar. So it's that really kind, or Copilot. It's just a bit like window dressing, see what it looks like. But in terms of actual real intention of using AI to fundamentally change the way marketing and other workflows within the organization work together, I think there are very few companies that have actually gone to that stage yet.
No, I would agree. And what I really wanted to do was frame this up around the foundation, because one of the biggest messages that you've certainly shared with me is that organizations are trying to build the penthouse before they've poured the slab. And I think that, I've spent a lot of time in this space over the last 12 months talking through, okay, well, what does this future of marketing look like? How do companies take their traditional business model from what I call 1.0 and transform that to 2.0, which is a completely different business from the business they have today. And
Absolutely.
I think that what I would really love to explore with you and for our listeners to understand is, can you explain this, building the penthouse before they've poured the slab? Can you explain that for us? And how long did building the foundation actually take? Because I think a lot of marketers and maybe even a lot of boards and C-suite leaders expect that you can kind of just like turn it on, when actually that's not the case at all. So if you can kind of take us behind the scenes of how you actually made that happen, that would be incredible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's also looking at it from a completely different perspective. A lot of boards, C-suite, stakeholders look at it as an IT transformation roadmap. And honestly, from where I sit, to get the most out of it, you actually need to look at it from what I call the growth seat. You need to look at how you're actually going to grow the business. So yes, it is obviously an investment. It is a hard cost investment, which is what our boards and our C-suite are But instead of looking at it, well, this is what's going to cost us, it's that flip side. What is it going to cost us if we don't do this? How much revenue can we actually generate from building this AI and agentic capability within our organizations? But to do that, you need to have your data. You need to have clean data, structured data, complete data. It needs to all be in the same place, or if it's not in the same place, have some sort of framework that you can pull all that data in. I think that's where
And
a
just
lot of
on that, Katrina, because I just wanted to, because you've got so much insight in this space, because a lot of marketers I speak to, and specifically CMOs, that is the biggest problem. But Alicia, we've got all of this data in different areas of the business. How do we actually, can you kind of take us in? How do you actually pull that together? Like if you've got this fragmentation or you've got a marketing technology stack that's held together by Band-Aids, how do you, what are the steps that you need to go through in order to go from fragmented to now unified in one place?
In healthcare, for example, there are a lot of different areas in which healthcare data is kept. Obviously, it's a highly regulated industry. We're keeping very sensitive information regarding individuals. Obviously, security and privacy are our main concerns when it comes to that data. So they will be held in different areas. Often organizations will have a data lake. I know that the organizations I've worked in have had data lakes, but what really is the game changer for us and across, as I said, a couple of different organizations I've worked with, was the use of Salesforce. So Data Cloud, or I think it's now been renamed Data 360, is that unifying layer. And you need to build that first. What that does is it kind of acts like the engine. Everything gets pulled into it, and then that's what is used to create that 360-degree view of a customer. So you could be pulling in from all sorts of different areas, but it pulls into the one unified profile. But to do that, it means that you need to make sure that you haven't got duplicate profiles. You need to make sure that the data is complete. You need to make sure the data is unified and the data is clean and structured. So there's a lot of work, and particularly for IT departments, in terms of that particular component of adopting AI. Now, to your point about the foundation, the penthouse, this is exactly right. This is the foundation. How many times have you driven past a building site and thought, oh my gosh, that building is taking so long to go up? In reality, there's so much going on underneath that you just can't see it. This is the same at an organization level, particularly for boards, to understand, well, we've agreed, we've invested, now where's our return? It takes around about 3 months to actually do that layer, to get something like Data 360 working across the organization before you can then start to layer on personalization or the use of agents.
All the sexy stuff.
All the sexy stuff. But once you get there, it's very quick. The foundation is what takes the longest. As soon as you've got that built, it makes it very, very easy to be able to sort of plug in all those other bits and pieces and actually really start to see that beautiful building come to life.
Amazing. And how did you manage, like obviously 3 months can feel like a lifetime in business when you're trying to get a new project off the ground. How did you specifically manage that sort of 3-month process where you can't really see anything above the surface, but for a fact everything is moving and is on track? How do you communicate that up from a commercial point of view and from a stakeholder point of view? Because what you were able to do so well in many of these different projects is get the stakeholder buy-in and then get everybody on the same page to make it happen. So how do marketers deal with that part?
It's really about making sure that you've got a framework, that you've got that plan documented so that you're able to actually report against that plan. So while you might not be able to see anything concrete in terms of an ROI from extra leads or extra conversions, you're actually able to show the progress of the implementation. And then once you get to that, I guess that inflection point where the implementation of all your foundation is built, then what that pathway is going to look like to actually put on all that exciting stuff that is going to show that measurable ROI in terms of revenue.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, now that's super helpful. Now, before we get into some of these sort of meaty questions, I wondered if you could give us a bit of a background on the type of organizations that you've been working in, the complexity of those sales funnels, because in my experience, having conversations with you, you've certainly been dealing with some of the most complex marketing and sales funnels in the market, not only the number of steps in the process until someone converts, but also the level of drop off through the funnel to then be able to get to those people that are actually converting. So can you give us some context and some background just on the type of sales funnels, the type of marketing funnels that you've been working with, some of the challenges before we get into some of this meaty AI transformation work that we're about to get stuck into?
So my background has predominantly been in healthcare, working with patients in oncology and IVF, and then working within the clinical trial organisations from phase 1 all the way through to phase 4. Now, with regard to that, patients have a problem. They're looking for a solution. They're coming to you. They've already started doing their research, or in the cases like IVF, you're doing a lot of education-based marketing to really educate people around sort of the fertility problems or answers they might be looking for. Something like clinical trials, though, is something completely different. If you're looking at early phase, these are healthy people that you're asking to perhaps come and be involved in something that they've never even thought of before. If you're looking at phases 2, 3, or 4 in clinical trials, that's patients looking again for that solution to a problem they might have. Whether you're looking at patients that you might need thousands of leads a month, you get to something like healthy volunteers and you need tens of thousands of leads a month. And whether you're talking about patients or volunteers for clinical trials, everything is dependent on someone's health status. Whether they qualify or not is dependent on their health status. So, in terms of, for IVF, are they at a particular stage? What are they looking for specifically? If you're looking at for a healthy volunteer for clinical trials, can they meet the requirements of the trial? Does their healthcare status match that point in time? Can they come into the clinic during the time? And then you add on top of that, you've got really short windows, particularly in clinical trial recruitment. These protocols have usually 21 to 28 days worth of recruitment time. That's it, to be able to fill complete cohorts. And it's an ongoing thing. If you miss one, then that has a flow-on effect to the next one. So without a doubt, this has been the most complex sales and marketing funnel that I've ever worked in.
It's incredible because when we look at, which is a great segue to sort of our conversation around AI and the use of AI agents, there's been so much data come out recently on these rising costs of AI, and specifically the US cases where obviously it's very obvious that they're all heading towards an IPO, so therefore they need to generate revenue. Costs are going to increase, but really we are going to hit an inflection point of this profitability crisis where companies cannot manage or handle the cost of AI. And we've looked at things like agentic work units. So if you've got, X amount of tokens, well, what is the actual agentic work unit that you're going to get out of it? And how do you find a way to efficiently use tokens to be able to produce AI-led workflows? And I know you have had quite a bit of experience in actually setting up AI agents and using them through the sales and marketing funnel to, reduce time to conversion, to reduce the amount of time that your recruitment people have to stay on the phone, and literally as much as reducing it by half, which is incredible. My question to you is, when you were thinking about the use of AI agents in your sales and marketing funnel, and you were forward thinking about, well, what is it that is actually going to make this productive and profitable? What were the kind of considerations that you had to go through up front to make sure that you just didn't end up with a massive AI bill at the end of it that was, completely unproductive because, you'd used a whole bunch of tokens, and yes, you've got an AI workflow, but it doesn't actually directly correlate to the profitability of the business. And I think this is where a lot of marketers right now are starting to experiment, doing a few workflows, feeling really good about it. And then the AI bill comes in at the end of the month for the cost of the tokens. And the CFO comes over and taps them on the shoulder and is like, look, your AI bill is out of control. And we've got Microsoft examples where they've turned off Claude. We've got Uber CEO coming out and saying, hey, we've gone through our AI annual budget in the first quarter of this year. So over to you, Katrina. I want to know how we overcome this because it's a very real issue in the market right now.
Oh, it's an incredibly real issue in the market, and it's something that everyone is now talking about. Because as you said, I read the same thing in terms of them shutting Claude off completely because it is just so expensive in terms of those tokens, and it doesn't seem like much when you're told that it's worth such a small amount per token. But when you're doing that at volume, and these conversations really do take a lot of tokens. So it's about how those agents are actually set up. And I think, to your point about, how do we solve this? Well, that's going to be a really big industry question. And I think a lot of, the providers out there, the Salesforces of the world, are going to have to come to the party in terms of, working with organizations for how they actually implement things like agents. From my perspective, when I was looking at, bringing an agent into an organization, it's really looking at how can we actually use this agent not just to increase productivity, which is obviously an important KPI, but how can we actually use this agent to drive revenue? Because at the end of the day, revenue, EBITDA, that's all the boards and our stakeholders and our C-suite are focused on, and quite rightly so. So it's a case of, yes, productivity will have an effect on revenue, because obviously it's going to bring your cost center down. But more importantly, you want to be able to use your agents to actually drive revenue. So from my perspective, and the organizations I've worked with, that they've all had call centers for, patients or, potential clinical trial participants to call in to discuss their healthcare status, to discuss their eligibility. And that takes time for somebody. Sometimes that will be a clinical person, so a nurse or perhaps even a doctor, but often it's not somebody who's clinical, and they're reading off a script in terms of, we've got this sort of person that we're looking for. So really that is something that an agent can take. And they can actually very much walk the person through each of those steps. It's also really important to remember that, as human beings, call centers operate on business hours, but we don't always want answers in business hours. We might want it on a Sunday night at 6:00. We might want it on a Saturday morning at 8:30. If the clinic isn't open, or the clinical trial recruitment center isn't open, I want to be able to still get the answers that I want, and to know, where can I go? Is this company an actual solution for me? So that's where bringing in agents can really help, obviously with the customer experience, but it can help drive the volume of those leads. It can help to qualify those leads, and provide much richer conversations for anybody who is in a contact center taking these calls, because they're already so much further along the pathway in terms of their journey with your organization.
And Katrina, can you give us a bit of context of some of those real success metrics that you experienced in setting up, AI agents through the sales process? What were some of the things that you were like, wow, this has clearly had a positive impact on either conversion or uplift or time or whatever that might be?
Yeah, no, we saw with agents that I've been involved in the deployment of, we saw contact center time could be reduced by up to 50% in some calls, just because of that that early process. You having an agent to be able to do it rather than needing a person to necessarily ask those questions. And we also saw up to a 20% increase in conversion rate. When they are coming through to the recruitment center. It's really important that, particularly with regard to this area of marketing, that healthcare side, you need really large lead numbers with really small single-digit conversion rates. So you have real drop-off along the funnel, all the way through from that very first lead, all the way through to when you might have a patient coming into the clinic or a participant coming in for a clinical trial. So it's being able to catch them at every single point. To have a look that if they, they didn't qualify for whatever reason, remarketing as well. So there's so many different layers to it, not just taking them through one, but then bringing them back to the top of funnel and working them through again.
Absolutely, to make sure that you squeeze as many conversions out of that initial top of the funnel activity to convert as much as possible, right? Wow.
Exactly.
I've been making notes while you've been talking. This is brilliant. So really, if I kind of bring this all full circle, that agent piece is really when companies or marketers are looking to deploy agents to support their marketing and sales process, it really is, it's a double-edged sword, in the sense that, one, you need to focus on, okay, well, how do I deploy this agent as efficiently as possible? What does the agent actually need to do? What's nice to have versus what's an absolute must, so that they can be efficient with the use of those agents and they can reduce the cost as much as possible. And when I say the cost, I mean the token usage. Because if they can get that to an optimal level, then that's going to be game changing. And then two, getting really focused on where is that going to impact conversion. So, okay, if we get this right, can we reduce call times by up to 50%? Can we have conversations with consumers outside of business hours that we weren't able to have, beforehand, and start to process some of those leads through? And then ultimately, can we get an efficiency gain of an increase in conversion rate to be able to get more bang for our buck, so to speak? Because you and I both know the sheer cost of media advertising at the top of the funnel, to bring people in, you really need every lever working as hard as possible to be able to reduce that CAC, that cost of acquisition. So I think that's just a brilliant example. Now I
Absolutely. I was
want
just going to
to,
say, if you look at someone in a call center, and they might be able to take a complex call, particularly, which is what you're seeing in healthcare, 2 maximum 3 calls an hour. Over an 8-hour day, that's 16 to 24 calls that one person can take. So if you multiply that by tens of thousands of leads that you might need in a month, it doesn't take much to figure out that the maths actually doesn't stack up. You can't just keep adding people into the equation. There does come a point in time that you do need to bring in this additional help through agents. As I said, it improves the customer experience, but also it helps drive efficiency within the business. And when you look at things like SMS usage, we are seeing people, the majority of people now, SMS is their preferred means of marketing communications. Now, you might be paying 0.04 cents per SMS, and that doesn't sound like much, but when you're sending hundreds of thousands of SMSs a month, that adds up very, very
it's a
quickly.
huge bill.
It's huge. So again, how do you actually maybe swap that out for something that an agent is doing with the token? Is the token cheaper than the SMS? Are you able to use something that I'm sure we're going to talk about a little bit later on in terms of that personalization, in terms of utilizing that data that you've been collecting? Can you actually capture them on the website and you don't need to market to them via SMS? So there's so many conversations to be had about where you might be able to actually pick up financial gains as well as productivity gains.
So it becomes like what you're saying there is it becomes a real commercial, assessment. Scenario A versus scenario B. To your point there, is the SMS scenario going to get us our greatest return on investment, or can we potentially deploy agents to do 2 or 3 steps by pulling them from the website that's going to give us a greater ROI? And if scenario A gives you a 4 times ROI, but scenario B gives you a 12 times ROI, I'm pretty sure you and I both know which one we're going to pick. So it becomes this brilliant, because that hadn't really considered it as a scenario analysis before. That's really where the marketing game is changing, because now as a CMO and a marketer, or a vice president, whatever you want to call it, you are now having to think completely different about the way you deploy these marketing led campaigns.
I think where where the changes will really happen, Alicia, is the fact that marketing is no longer just a cost center. We have been seen as marketers and running marketing departments as we are a cost to the business. Where this has really flipped is the fact that we are actually the revenue generators. We are the growth sheet, because right from the very top of the funnel all the way through to the
I
end.
want to clap you in right now, Katrina.
Again.
That's exactly it. Keep going, but that's brilliant.
That's exactly what we are. We are where the revenue is. We are the revenue drivers and the growth drivers. So those companies who are going to do really well and get ahead are where the CMO is sitting alongside the CFO and the CEO making these decisions. They can't be made from the IT roadmap seat, because absolutely there's investment to be made, and that does cost money. But what you have to look at is investment going to drive how much revenue? That is what you need to be looking at, rather than this is what the investment piece is going to be. So if you're driving it from what I call the growth seat rather than the IT seat, you're going to have much better outcomes.
Now tell me this, Katrina, because this is a topic on so many marketing agendas right now, especially for these marketing leaders. What does it take? How do you move from being the cost center to the growth architect, the growth agent, so to speak? What is it that you believe is required from a mindset point of view, from a skill point of view? How did you do that? Because I think a lot of marketers are out there listening going, okay, this sounds great. I absolutely want to be in that seat. I want to be in the growth seat. I want to be the architect of this next phase of the business. Mechanics, technique aside, what is it? What does it take from a mindset, from a process, from a deployment point of view to actually make this happen? And because you've been through it, I know you'll be able to give some insights to the marketers out there just wondering, okay, how do I show up? How do I meet this moment as a confident CMO?
I think it's a case of, I know it's a case of, we're no longer looking at running campaigns and showing ROI, according to a campaign or a series of campaigns over the course of the year. What we need to look at is each department, which might be running in silos, need to work together. So from a marketing perspective, instead of looking at top of funnel only, I know something that I've always been frustrated by is watching the leads that I generate slowly disappear out of the funnel and fall out all along the way, as it goes through, because everyone's working in silos and everybody is working, according to their department, but each department is having a flow-on effect back to the top. So not necessarily to the department above or below, although that can that obviously does happen, it does come back to the top. So marketing is the one that it actually affects the most. So from my perspective, sitting in the CMO seat, looking at what is the entire journey of that customer, not just through marketing, but as they go through every single part of the business, and then mapping that out and understanding what needs to flow, what the customer touch points are at each point in time, and then what the opportunity cost is. To retain them if you were to change things. So whether it might be, your processes, it might be the way in which you engage, whatever that is. And then it's being able to demonstrate that in, the currency of financial terms.
Correct. To say, okay, this is like if we do X, Y, and Z, this is the commercial output that we can expect. And then being able to get everybody, which you're able to do, get everybody on board to be like, right, this is the way we're going. And I just think that there's a lot of fear out there right now for many reasons, which we will get into. It's about trying to sort of go, okay, yes, that's the fear. Yes, that's the uncertainty. I can accept all of that. But now how do I step up as a CMO, as a leader, to be able to really chart the path forward? And I really, call it the optimist in me. I just think this is a real opportunity for marketers to meet the moment in this next 6 to 12 months, to be able to kind of grab this and go, right, if I just, get these 4 or 5 things in place, there's no reason why in 12 months from now, I can't have my marketing unit, my business, really in that agentic-led space where they're able to, transform the way in which they engage with their consumers. So I think that's really awesome feedback.
Absolutely. And I would say for, any head of marketing or CMO, it's really understanding the financials of the business. What is the EBITDA number that you're chasing? What is the budget that, your stakeholder or your boards are looking for? And then understanding how, from a marketing perspective, from a growth seat, how you're actually going to drive that. That's what it's really understanding. So it's really understanding the financials of business in conjunction with your consumer and your marketing.
Amazing. And Katrina, in that process, are you, if you say, okay, let's just keep it super simple. We've got a $10 million EBITDA number that we've got to hit. Is that really a matter of, okay, well, that means that, there's X amount of top line revenue that needs to be achieved, and then reverse engineering the marketing process to get there? Are you, is it like a top down or a bottom up? What are you, when you're looking at those big numbers that need to be hit, how are you communicating that in a relevant and commercial led way to get teams on board and to get businesses on board? Do you have any pearls of wisdom for us there?
So I'll use the example of, if you worked in a clinical trial space, you need to look at, well, we need to have X number of people who are going to be dosed over the course of a year to reach a number. So you then reverse engineer what that will look like, because your drop-offs are at each point. And it would be the same if you're working in, IVF, or you're working in some other sort of patient-led clinic. It's exactly the same model. I would think actually something that's actually quite similar would probably be around weight loss clinics at the moment. They would be operating on a very similar model. So to reach those targets that you've got, or that have been set by the board or by the stakeholder, how many do you actually need to reverse engineer back up the line? So if you can actually then reduce what your conversion rate drop off is, then you're going to be actually picking up along the way. So it's just, it is a case.
It becomes, I agree, it becomes so convincing when you can say, look, we've got a 10% drop off between stage 3 and 4. If we just fix that stage of the funnel, just one stage of the funnel, and we, automate that, or we add the AI agent, or we do whatever, that is going to unlock X amount of business revenue. And I think we can get that commercial lens. It's so powerful.
Absolutely. If you have a 40% drop off in one part, and you can even reduce that by half, that is enormous. It's going to obviously take the pressure off your lead generation, so your lead generation budget. It's going to improve the conversion through the funnel. And if you can make even small tweaks along the funnel, then that's going to have an enormous impact at the end of the day. And then that's just more opportunity for you to re-engage as well.
100%. Now, when we look at this sort of the introduction of AI, there's so much conversation about, who is going to keep their jobs, how many jobs are going to be lost, and what the real ramifications are of that. Now, I do think this is, there's a lot of fear in and around that, and maybe that's what's limiting people being courageous and brave to, to make these moves. I read a recent example of IKEA, who were able to, basically automate their entire call center to be able to manage the incoming calls. And then they retrained and redeployed their call center team to then become interior design experts. And off the back of that, they then were able to provide a consultative approach and a value-based service to their customers. And they unlocked, $1.2 billion of additional revenue. So that, to me, is the first example I have come across of a company who has said, okay, we are going to automate using AI. We are then going to not fire, but redeploy our teams to be able to be of use and create value in a different way that we didn't know was possible. And we're going to unlock commercial value from it. I mean, it's like the freaking unicorn right now of what we're all trying to achieve. I guess when you're thinking about, and I know you've had similar experience in the organizations that you've been working in, I think the big question from a lot of marketers right now is, okay, if I am going to create efficiency through the funnel or within my marketing operations, leveraging AI, how can I think differently as opposed to, right, that's then going to allow me to, cut X amount of headcount, versus how can I redeploy or how can I recreate roles that weren't there before? So having gone through this experience and created this efficiency, what's your advice to marketers of how to look at that? What's the approach to take? How can they think differently? And what is actually the value? Because I think we can all agree, yes, there is efficiency gains there. Yes, there are maybe some roles that are no longer required because the output of AI is just getting so good. But how do we now recreate our marketing organizations in this new world? How do we set that up? And I think that's a lot of big question. I know it's a pretty meaty one, but some big questions coming from, just to give you the challenging ones, some big questions coming from marketers at the moment.
And I think as marketers, as we all know, we tend to run the leanest. It has been my experience, no matter where I've worked, marketing, always runs on a, very, very tight budget, very lean in terms of headcount. So I think what AI is actually doing is providing a real opportunity for those of us, or the majority of us who are running with really lean departments, to be able to utilize AI to do a lot of the work that perhaps, we have had to have, our more, junior our coordinators doing, our more junior members of the team. Now, that said, they still need to get experience somewhere. We don't want to have a case of we've got all these graduates coming out. The way that we've all developed experience over the years is because we've worked our way through. You still need the human in the loop. You still need somebody who can look at that and go, no, that's not quite right, or that's not going to work that way because of X, Y, and Z. But if you can have, your AI, it's got your brand voice, it's already pumping out, at least first, second, third drafts of perhaps your social media posts or your educational content, then somebody else can actually be vetting that, going through it. It's already saving time. So it's about how do you use it to drive efficiencies, to be able to free up people in your team, and then you can actually train those people. You might train them into a specialist position. You might decide to, use them in a completely different area of marketing, but it allows you to grow your team without growing your headcount, which, as we know, is the hardest thing to get past a CFO.
100%. I think there's like every marketer out there has a list of parked items that they just haven't got to because of the sheer pace at which everybody is moving at, especially when you're managing multiple stakeholders. Yeah, I just think it's a really interesting journey that marketing teams for the first time really this year are going on, is going, okay, well, if I'm getting downward pressure to reduce headcount and create efficiency via AI, how can I, yes, okay, there has to be some, natural attrition or whatever, but how can I rethink that to get greater output or greater performance, from whatever those efficiency gains are? So I think it's a really interesting discussion. Now,
and that's when it comes down to things like, I know we're going to jump into personalization probably a little bit about now. So, but to that point, this is where, you will be able to make gains, because instead of having somebody, creating, a newsletter content or email content, if you create the content and then the systems are actually able to personalize it according to individuals, then again, you'll scale it.
100%. And just thinking about like some of the things, and that personalization space is like opening Pandora's box, right? Like the amount of marketing teams that just want to get to that, to want to create these unique and incredible experiences for their customers coming through the funnel that just haven't been able to. I often say at the moment that this is the first time that the technology has caught up to our ambition as marketers. So the things that we want to do, the things that we've always wanted to make happen, but we've ended up in rooms where it's like, we can't do this because this doesn't connect to this, or we haven't got this here, or we haven't got enough resources. Some of those genuine excuses are now starting to be overcome. And now we can actually go about doing that, which is an awesome segue into personalization, because we've obviously covered the foundations, we've covered, the use of AI agents. Once this foundation, if we kind of go back to what you've been through, of once you've got these data foundations in place and once you've got the frameworks in place, what I want to kind of understand is what suddenly became possible for you. How does personalization change when it's driven by very reliable data very reliable behavioral science and not just demographics and interest. What has been your experience, and what has been sort of the really key advantages of being able to create a fully personalized experience?
What it allows you to do is, particularly for your own website, if someone's coming to your website and they're looking at something and they might be visiting your pages or different pages along the way, that is actually, that data or information about them is actually collected within your Data 360, within your data cloud. And so you're able to then personalize the content that is served to that consumer on the website. So for example, if they're looking at a particular education piece of educational content, or if they're interested in a particular service, that will then be recorded. And when they come back to the website, that will be served to them as the first thing that they see. So it's like that jogging, last time you were interested in X, can we help you with that? And now with agents, with personalization, is the next iteration would be that the agent pops up to say, hi, Alicia, last time you were here, you were looking at X, Y, and Z. How can I help you with that further?
Yeah. And that's incredible, right? Because that comes into that conversational e-commerce, which to me, this is one of the things I'm really super excited about, is an ability for a customer to have a in-store experience on a website where it's like, you've got the example of, okay, well, how can I help you today? What do you want? Would you like me to go and grab that and add that to your cart? Is there anything else that you need? Do you need some installation services or whatever it might be? This to me is one of the most game-changing aspects. And what's exciting is that, now with the various plugins that are available, it's becoming quite achievable to make happen. And I just see incremental improvement through the funnel with this. I guess from your perspective, with obviously being able to bring so much data into one place, how have you seen that value of personalization roll out across the funnel or across the various channels that you've been using?
It really improves, as I said, the customer experience, because again, the answers to what they come asking for, but it also gives my team or myself as a marketer greater visibility over where are those friction points? Where are we actually losing people that you wouldn't have actually seen previously? So you're really able to see, is it really top of funnel? So do we need to add more information and more content there? Is there more education required? Or is it further down that we're losing people through, one reason or another? So it gives you really very clear insights into why somebody is actually bouncing off your website, rather than just, well, we had this many bounces today and we've got no idea why. We can make some educated guesses, but we don't know for sure. The beauty of personalization is that you can actually see in real time where those friction points are, which allows you then to go back and to fix those friction points, so that you're continuing to refine the funnel along the way.
You're getting like 2 or 3 layers deeper than what you otherwise would be able to.
And
Yeah,
in something
awesome.
like healthcare, where yes, being able to, from a consumer perspective, I don't know if you're going to buy a new lipstick, or you're looking for something that, when you add to your cart. From a healthcare perspective, obviously the data is so regulated. It's one of the most regulated industries, probably alongside something like finance. So again, it's these guardrails that agents and personalization has to work alongside. But also, because it is so personal, you want to make sure that the experience that they're getting is actually matching what they're looking for. So again, it's those organizations that are going to be able to provide that personalized experience that meets the customer where they are, that are going to get ahead.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now tell me, because it's another good segue into sort of like what I'm calling the messiness of media advertising. So for years now, possibly decades, we've had this challenge of the fragmentation of media advertising, buying across multiple ad platforms, using multiple channels, multiple stages of funnel. How do you get, this unified view to really start to understand what's working, what's not, and what you can actually clearly attribute to, a back-end conversion? And I think that we're in a space again for the first time with the technology and the foundations that are now available to be able to really clean up some of that messiness and give brands a clear view of the way in which people are moving through their funnel, the drop-offs, everything that you've spoken about. So when you think about this, how do you see this era that we are now in from a AI transformation, agentic-led world? Where do you see the value of that? What is it that we're going to get out of this next chapter to be able to get more control, more visibility, and less fragmentation across our campaigns as marketers?
I think the introduction of LLMs, into the mix has actually just made it even more fractured. And what I have affectionately referred to as the dark funnel. Again, we have this area that we absolutely cannot measure. Now, we've gotten ourselves into a situation, I think, where, as marketers, we are reporting on conversions, we're reporting on KPIs, how many clicks, how many impressions, whatever it might be. So again, our C-suite, our board, they want to see the ROI based on metrics. What we're now seeing is that attribution, which we got to a point where we can have a look at what's coming through from Google or from, Meta, and Meta might be our awareness channel and Google might be our conversion channel, or, whatever it might be. You were able to get fairly good context with regard to where they were coming from. With the introduction of people utilizing LLMs basically as their new search, that's where they're going. So again, how do we know? How do we know that that's come from somewhere like ChatGPT or from Claude or Perplexity or wherever it might be? And that is a case of the foundations for the website have to be set up so well. So for example, everything needs to be event-based. So you're capturing the events that these people are triggering again in Data 360, because then you're actually able to not only personalize to them, but with the change in the algorithms not allowing you to take DID data and send it back in for lookalike audiences. This allows you to actually be able to create essentially a persona of what somebody might look like and use that to serve rather than a de-identified data list.
Yes, that makes sense. And can you give us because this is a really great just, I guess, the segment piece for people to understand. If when you talk about, let's just use the Salesforce example. If you've got Data Cloud and then you've got Marketing Cloud, but Data Cloud is really the push into Marketing Cloud for you to run all of your campaigns. When we look at the future state of marketing, if you've got this all set up properly, you've got all of your data in one place, you've got an engine like a Marketing Cloud that enables you to plug all of your channels into, where you can effectively run your campaigns from, and then use the media planning, buying, activation, campaign agents to deploy maybe, let's be conservative, maybe 30 to 40% of what your team is doing at a base value. With your experience and having brought this all together and really what I would call being on the leading edge of this thing, because we know it's going to only get better and better. What was it that was cleaned up for you in this process? Where was the visibility where you could kind of go, okay, I can now start to see some of that single view aspect?
I think a lot of organizations, and I've worked for a number of organizations that have Salesforce as their CRM, and what I have seen in each of them is the fact that it does tend to be very siloed. So you've got your marketing cloud, you've got your sales cloud, you've got your service cloud, and they all operate separately rather than as an integrated package. Where the opportunity is, and where we were able to make significant gains, was to be able to take your Data 360, and that is your engine. That's what's serving your marketing cloud, your service cloud. So you might have somebody who's coming through, and you're able to generate a lead that then goes into service cloud. For a sales agent to be able to call them back, and then it can go into sales cloud. So it's using the stack together rather than for separate parts of the business. And I think that's where the real opportunity is going to be for a lot of businesses, is looking at what they have, not necessarily purchasing new components of something like Salesforce, although there will be actually opportunities, but connecting it. But
And
to
I think
connect
that
it, you need your data in the one place.
Yeah, and this is it's beautiful because it kind of brings it all 360, is regardless of the platform that you're using, regardless of the outcome, the commercial outcome that you're trying to achieve. I think the really crystal clear message here is that we have to clean up our foundations. I've been saying to marketers, between now and Christmas is the time. You must clean up your foundations. You must get your house in order. You must get your data clear and unified and understandable, so that when you go to deploy and to add this, incredible AI layer, you're doing it off a great foundation and a great base. I think there's a lot of companies out there that are like, oh, we're just going to flick a switch, AI is going to turn on and it's going to be magical and there's going to be unicorns and rainbows and it's just going to be wonderful. And, people like us are sitting there going, whoa, Tiger, hang on a second. Actually, there are some really important foundations that need to be set up and in place. And part of marketing's role here is to educate the business on what needs to happen. You can't go from A to B without the bridge. It's just not going to happen. And so I just think that what you've said here, and as a key takeaway, is just mission critical, is get that data clear, get it in the one place, get the foundation set up. And then with those fantastic foundations is where you will then be able to overlay AI integrate pre-existing processes, great pre-existing systems so that the AI can then learn, improve, and optimize from there.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at something like, Data 360, you've got all of your data in there in terms of it's got that unified profile of a single person. Talking to your point earlier about, the paid media, suddenly you're actually able to target that person, whether it be on a Google platform or a Meta platform. And it follows on from what they just looked at. With the announcement of, the relationship with Canva now and Salesforce, can you imagine what you can create with personalization in real time to create within Canva, obviously within the boundaries, but to create a personalized piece of content directly to that person based on what they've just been doing on your website? I mean, that is the holy grail. That's incredible.
100%. And you and I were talking about, especially with some of your complex sales systems, the just sheer amount of creative that is required. Like, we already know that these advertising platforms are just hungry. The algorithms are hungry for creative. But some of the examples you've been giving me with the complexity of the sales process, with the number of different campaigns you have running at any given time, how do you get the creative that you need for each campaign? So, and I'd love to ask you, because you've been through it, how did you start to create some of that efficiency, and how do you see that now being created with the updates that are now available to be able to actually, yes, get your brand guidelines in place, get your beautiful creative idea in place, sure. But then from a creative production standpoint, how much efficiency is available now that wasn't available, 6 months ago?
Yeah, it's a case of it comes back down to that, to segmentation, pure and simple in terms of making sure that you've got all your creative built according to your segment. And it's not necessarily just, an age or a demographic. And when I've been working, we can have up to 80 campaigns running at any one point in time. And it might be for exactly the same demographic.
80,
Same.
80,
Yes, yes.
80 campaigns, people.
Which is and that's across all forms of digital media, but it's enormous, and you're looking for different people that fit there, and they overlap. All of these segments overlap, so it's about having this wonderful vault of all of this creative that you can then draw on, and you really do have to be, you have to work ahead. You have to work with your agencies to get that into place. But then when you have it and it's in the system, at a place that has the guardrails in place, and the AI can pull from it, that's really, really powerful.
Yeah, I agree. The numbers I've done on the efficiency gains from a pure creative production point of view are very exciting, because that's now money in the market that you can have working for you to increase leads, increase conversions, and so on. Okay, so a couple of questions before we move on to sort of the final aspects is around how is AI changing customer discovery, and why is GEO now becoming just as important as SEO? What's your take on that, and what are you seeing?
Well, back what we were talking about, that people are going to the chat GPTs or the Claudes or Perplexities to ask their questions. So a lot of that, that groundwork, that information gathering is no longer being done on Google. So going through and looking what the largest Google searches are is not as relevant anymore, because those searches are actually taking place within large language models. That's where it's happening. That's where decisions are being made. So it's about making sure that the content on your website is structured in such a way that the large language models can read it. And it has to be in the same format as what an agent needs. So really, there is a lot of opportunity from that perspective to be able to utilize the content that an agent needs along with the content that the LLM will be able to read. And then it's making sure that your website is set up in such a way that you're able to pull those service logs. You're able to see where, say, a chat GPT or a Perplexity has actually driven in a direct lead. Having said that, though, not everyone's going to click on something from ChatGPT, but what you might be looking for is within Google. Are you suddenly seeing a spike in demand for actual name brand recognition? Are people actually directly searching for your brand? So again, are you able to correlate that? And then again, back to the website again. So it really is about how do we actually put it all together? And there is going to be science involved, but there's also going to be a bit of an art form, because as I said, you're not always going to be able to do direct attribution when it comes to LLM. And that's where GEO is actually becoming so more important than SEO, because people are no longer finding you on Google or through Meta.
It's not just Google's game anymore, right? Like the whole landscape has opened up, and now it's going to be across all LLMs.
And there is already advertising starting to come out on LLMs. They are talking about that being able to do consumer advertising. So again, that is going to change the landscape. We've seen Reddit's advertising really skyrocket since we've seen the introduction of LLMs, because again, people are looking at alternative areas to do their research and to
They're
get their
finding information in different ways, right? So does
Exactly.
brand become more important than ever?
I think so. I think we've lost our way with you're looking at brand marketing versus your lead generation. And again, back to the point that I made that CFOs and boards want to see the ROI. How many click-throughs have we had? How many leads? And that's all well and good for in the now, but you have to build trust. You have to build brand. People have to know who you are and trust you to come searching for you. So if you don't do that work, then this is going to be a really hard slog all the time.
Yeah.
So I've always looked at it. You should really do it like a 60-40 approach. 60% should be on brand, 40% should be on your direct, absolutely, these sales leads we need today.
Performance,
because brand is building tomorrow's lead generation.
No, look, it's a great point. I think it's another topic up for discussion when we're looking at all of these various components. Oh my gosh, what a session. So I guess to finish this and wrap this all up, Katrina, what do you think, if we take a step back and we just look at this from a leadership and a growth point of view, what do you think separates tomorrow's marketing leaders from today's?
I think tomorrow's marketing leaders have to be as much of a sales and a commercial mindset as a marketing. You have to be able to put it all together. So you need to be sales, commercially minded, and to combine that with marketing. So it's no longer just about creating the top of the funnel. It's about, how do I actually grow the top of the funnel? How can I find new opportunities to generate revenue? And then how can I keep what we've got going through the funnel? So it's really moved away from about running a department, running campaigns, and really that full funnel commercial look at the business.
It's funny, isn't it? I speak to so many marketers and I keep hearing the role is just getting so much bigger. They're a firefighter, they're a psychologist, they're a creative director, they're a finance manager, all before lunchtime. And it does feel like it just seems to be compounding. But I think that the marketers that are getting ahead are the ones that are just have this laser focus and this real clarity about where it is that they need to get to. And they are just backing themselves to make it happen. So my last question to you today, Katrina, is what advice would you give someone trying to lead this kind of transformation that we've been speaking about today? You've been in the driver's seat, you've made it happen, you've been the trailblazer in this space. What is it that you would sort of say to that marketer listening today? What do they need to focus on? What's the advice?
It really is focus on what you want to achieve. Back yourself, put together the plan so that it's really very, very simple, that if we don't do this, this is what the cost is going to be. So really look at it instead of looking at what the actual commercial cost is going to be to implement, whatever it might be from a MarTech perspective. Strip it back a layer, create the story. This is what it's going to cost us if we don't do that. And it might be a competitor's going to get there first. It's going to cost us this many, new customers, whatever it might be. But it's a case of identify what that value add is going to be, paint the picture, and sell the story.
I love that example of, because often we're so focused on the upside that this is going to achieve. What is it? If we do this, we're going to get this. But what you're effectively saying is, what is the cost of not doing it? So if in a year from now, we still haven't made progress in this space, what's the real cost of us not achieving it? That's brilliant. Katrina, I just want to say a massive thank you for joining me on the show today, for being so open and so willing to share all of these insights, because you've walked the path that other marketers are now walking. And I think that it's so important, and maybe more important than ever, that we come together, we share these stories, and we learn from each other because of just the very real and new world that we now find ourselves in. So a massive thank you to you for being so willing to be here and to share these insights today. Now, if people want to learn more, if they want to ask some extra questions, where is the best place to find you?
Oh, please DM me via LinkedIn. I'm happy to answer questions and, just discuss, where people are at and offer any help that I can. It's an area that I'm so excited about. Genuinely, this is what motivates me to get out of bed in the morning. The opportunities for agentic marketing is just enormous. And I know from sort of talking with other industry people that everyone's excited about it, but there's a lot of fear because of that data layer and because of what it's going to cost. So again, are you AI ready? what do you need to do to become AI ready, and what's going to be the cost if you don't do it.
Love that. Thank you so much. Look, everybody, I hope you've got as much value from this conversation today as I have. If you're a marketing leader dealing with complexity, with data, with AI, with attribution challenges, this episode has given you a real look at what it takes to build a working growth system, as Katrina said, to be AI ready to take on the challenges of this next chapter of marketing. If you've got value from this episode, make sure you hit subscribe to the Black Box of Media and leave a review. It helps more marketers like you unlock the hidden strategies behind high performance marketing and media advertising. Let's keep this conversation going. If today's episode has sparked new ideas or challenged the way you think about media, I would love to hear from you. Make sure you drop me a message on LinkedIn and share your biggest takeaway. Until next time, keep pushing boundaries, keep testing, keep growing, and most importantly, keep making marketing and media work hard for you. I'll see you in the next episode.